Hey there, I don't know how to say this nicely, but you're not really good enough to charge that much. And really, there are enough really good musicians in this town already, so you can just stop. Also, I know you have 2 degrees and an instrument worth more than my car, but can you play this one for free? So these are thoughts that you would probably never say to a friend or colleague. And yet, why is it okay that we say these same thoughts to ourselves over and over? It's not okay. It's time to start believing what you're worth, charging what you're worth, and stop selling yourself short. How do we start doing that? Well, we're going to tell you right now. Well, welcome back to the Per Service Podcast. We exist here as a podcast to help classical musicians find out how they can live a happy and successful life in the performing arts. And we do this by actually talking about our insecurities, the things we learned the hard way, some encouraging books we've read, and by bringing in super interesting people like bassoonist extraordinaire Sarah Lee onto the show. Now, we're not an interview show. There are lots of those out there. There are some great ones. If you're into that sort of thing, go check out Crushing Classical, Contrabass Conversations, The Young Musician's Guide, Clarinet, Musicpreneur, all really great shows. I'd be here all day if I listed them all. So unfortunately, we just don't have the space to really get to know each of the hosts in depth. So to learn more about who we are and more about our special guest today, visit our show notes page at perservice.co/26. But first, this episode is made possible by Fix Music Publishing. If you haven't checked out this website, seriously, go look them up. The next time you need to buy some sheet music, start here. It's a beautiful, simple site that won't attack your eyes or your bank account when you're just trying to find some sheet music. Seriously, they have free shipping on all orders over $30, and they currently are stocking violin, piano, and small ensemble selections like trios and string quartets. So visit fixmusic.com. That's FICKS music.com. And if you use the promo code PERSERVICE at checkout, you can get 10% off your order. Okay, here is the show. Anybody have a good
Hey
have a
guys,
good way to get started?
Today's podcast is about pricing. Hey everyone. Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about pricing ourselves.
That sounds like prostitution when you say it.
I know. That's what I was thinking.
We are the Per Service podcast. Okay. Christian is not amused.
No, I was trying to think. Well, there were 2 situations came to mind. One was an old Montel Williams clip, or it might have been the Ricky Lake show. There was a great show where people were talking about, like how they get things for free or whatever. And this girl was like, "Oh man, I love to go through Taco Bell. And like, if I just go through in my bra, like they'll give me some, food for free, blah, blah, blah." And then this woman said up, she was like, "Are you trying to tell me your body ain't nothing worth more than like an 89-cent taco, like soft shell wrap?" And it was so funny. And ever since then I just reminded myself, I was like, my body is worth more than an 89-cent taco.
It's actually not a bad point.
Yeah. And this is
a good life
very appropriate for today's discussion and a great way to start a podcast.
Yeah. And actually, so who is the mysterious voice joining us today?
Ooh.
And do you want to introduce our guest today?
Yeah. Today we have our good friend, Sarah Lee, who does not make pies.
Not well.
But
Well,
she could.
She could, though, and has just a really great name for it. But Sarah
It's
Lee,
not my name. It's my married name. It's not my fault.
Sarah Lee is a bassoonist, and she and her dog Lundy are here in New York today. She's taking a lesson, and she's going to bring some wind perspective to our episode.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Great having you.
Yeah, it's nice having it because we just by design have a lot of string perspective so far. And so we're like, we have a big blind spot to the rest of this wind and brass world. And I guess there's percussionists too someday, maybe. But
So thanks to the winds and brass and pianists and percussionists who put up with our string talk. And also, we want you to feel more included.
So here's that. So today we're talking about selling yourself short. And there's two categories that I think we're gonna talk about. The first being kind of selling yourself short to yourself and not really believing what you're worth. And then later on, we'll talk about actually selling yourself to other people or like setting your prices for things. So kind of to get things started, I don't know. I guess a lot of this kind of stems from when you get out of school. At least that's when I really started realizing it for me, was all of a sudden you have to really believe what you're worth, or like believe that you still want to do this and that you're good enough to continue with music and to play music. And for me, I had a lot of self-doubt as to if I was good enough, which I think shows you that it was, for me, I was really separating what I wanted versus where everybody else was and if I was good enough. Did you guys have sort of the same dilemma when you got out of school?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I feel like I definitely had those thoughts, and it led to me being in situations which I gained a lot of experience, knowledge from, but maybe weren't the best because they didn't provide financially. And so I did have a crisis of like, what am I worth? And maybe it was a good thing that I sold myself for nothing, for an 89-cent taco, to do tons of work and tons of rehearsing and commit tons of hours. But that I personally went through that.
I was going to say, I still go through those doubts where I'm like, am I good enough to do this?
Right.
I don't know. That's like, it's the constant dilemma of the artist.
I was going to say, it's a little different for wind players. We don't often have the opportunity. Not that we don't have the opportunity to sub as often, but there aren't as many like violin, or there are more violin positions than there are bassoon positions to.
Oh, sure.
And so it often is a lot harder to get in. So in terms of believing in yourself to get into a section, I don't know, it's a little bit different. You know, there are only so many sections, so you're in it or you're not.
I was really curious about this because like as string players, it's like, oh yeah, you get out of school, start subbing. It's like, yeah, it's what happens because there's tons of spots. There's lots of turnover because violinists are super squirrely. We're like, oh, I found a better gig, I'm going to go do that. I found a better gig, I'm going to go do that. And for wind players, it's like legitimately there's only 2 spots, like maybe 3, right? And chances are those 2 people have them locked down in, a 2-hour radius of whatever city. It's probably the same 2 people drive around and play all the little regional orchestras. So
right. Well, for example, like when I moved to Erie, the woman who played principal bassoon in one orchestra and second bassoon in the other orchestra, there's a chamber orchestra and a philharmonic in town. And she had those positions for 35 years and retired the year that I moved there.
Wow.
Okay. So like the stars aligned, but that is the reality for bassoonists in that you can be someplace and that is 35 years until you get the job.
Right.
That's life.
But you also like, you had your master's degree, right? Would you finish your just master?
Right.
Did you do an
artist diploma?
Right? So it's like it wasn't just like, oh, hey, I just happened to be the next person in line. It's like you were also super qualified.
Well, I had to audition for them, but yeah, even the fact that they were open was like a miracle.
Right.
So, and that's hard because like you have to have the confidence. I don't know. Like I always say, it must be better and worse to be a string player because at least there are 5,000 string positions open all the time. But then that must be terrible to feel like, well, should I take all the string auditions or should I take one or should I take half? Or for bassoon, it's like, there's one open this year. Let's go. Yeah. But then there may not be one open for a little bit, for like a couple of years. So then you're like kind of out of audition practice. So I don't know which one is better or worse.
Yeah.
Right? Do you see what I'm saying? So like you have to have that confidence for like, all right, when it comes, I need to be ready and I need to know that I deserve this, right? Because you have to walk in there saying, I may not get this today, but I deserve it. I'm good enough for this. I could win this because I am a good enough player.
Yeah.
How many years out of school were you until this came up?
The Erie jobs?
Yeah. I'm just curious what you did in between, in between graduation and this, like, is there an opportunity? Yeah. Okay. See, this is what this is what I'm also curious about.
Well, so I moved to Erie where my husband's a medical resident. I finished my artist diploma in May of 2014. The woman stepped down as principal bassoon with the chamber orchestra in January of 2015. I won the job fall of 2015. So it was actually pretty darn fast, but I did have a whole year. I worked a job. I was an administrative assistant at a university and did spreadsheets all the time, which was very sad for my heart. I worked with great people, so I can't like totally poo-poo it, but
yeah, but that's probably hard to do office job and still be practicing and still being like, I'm still a musician.
Right. So it was also super hard because I was actually subbing a lot at that point with the Phil and the chamber orchestra before I like won each position. So I would get up really early in the morning and practice and then work 8 to 5, stay at work and eat dinner and practice a little bit more and then play in the orchestra from like 7:30 to 10.
That's hustling right there.
Yeah. So that was a hard year, actually. Yeah.
Did you have to battle some of those, like, am I selling myself short feelings, or like, basically like I'm worth more than this. I've studied, I have these degrees, and yet I'm working an office job. Like, did you have to battle those sort of feelings, or was it just kind of like, no, this is a means to an end? Like eventually the position will open up, and until then I'm just bridging the gap.
Right. So that's the funny thing. I think those transition periods are so short and so long. One day you're like, oh my gosh, I am doing great. I get to gig with this orchestra and this is just a step to the next platform, to the next, and you feel so confident and you're ready to go that day. And then you wake up the next day and you're like, what am I doing with my life? If only you could have that focus during that time and just know that it's just a time. But, every day you feel so different. So I think a lot of it is remembering to stay in that mind game of this is worth it. I know I'm just doing it temporarily and I know my worth at the end of the day for what eventually I will do, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's when that season gets prolonged. Like, I know we have friends, or it's been us before, where we are constantly feeling like we're selling ourselves short, and it gets to be a pattern where you're like, man, is this all that the music world has for me? I think that's been my question here and there with, my seasons of not working as much as I would like to, and with New York being competitive, just feeling like, is this eternal? Is this all I'm worth? Is this all I'm ever going to be? Like, am I never going to reach that next level? Like, I feel like I struggle with that now, even though I've maybe bumped up a notch. Yeah. I feel like, when's the next level going to come? How long am I going to stay at this one?
Yeah, totally.
Have you guys ever played a gig that was actually so bad that it made you question that? Like, yes, okay, what am I doing with my life? Or like, is this really where I'm at? But then rather than sinking into that pit of despair, you said, actually, I am worth more than that. And you said, okay, I'm just not going to do that gig again. Like, I'm not going to play with this group again, or I am going to start charging more, or maybe only taking the gigs that pay more. Like, I think there is a way, when these things happen, you either let them, knock you down, kind of like a wave, right? You either like let it pull you under, or like you say, actually, no, I'm going to go swim somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I think yes, and yes to all of the things that you have said. There have definitely been times I'm like, oh my gosh.
Do you have a specific memory of one?
Well, there have just been groups that I've played in that it's just, every minute is painful. And it's not only painful musically, but then I know that the check is going to be painful because it's not worth. You know what I'm saying? It's not as much as I think I'm worth.
Double whammy right there.
However, those have also usually been the times that I cannot be picky. Like, I'm desperate. I have recently moved somewhere, or like I'm the new person in town or whatever, and I have to pay rent. And so I don't have a choice. I have to take those gigs at that time. And then for me, it becomes a mindset so that you don't want to kill yourself or like throw your violin in the trash or your bassoon in the trash or something.
What's the one you said the other day, the last episode? Throw your violin in the road.
Yeah, just throw it in the river. It was.
Oh, the river.
Usually I like to throw it in a body of water.
The river or the road if you don't have a river.
Yeah, I usually try to throw it in a body of water.
Yeah. Okay.
It just seems more dramatic.
Yeah.
But and then it becomes a mindset, and I've recently kind of come off of that, and the mindset I had to do is like, but I'm playing, I am making a living, doing what I want to do, and then it becomes the mindset of, how can I better myself during this rehearsal as a player? Or maybe it's just like, what? I'm just going to have a good time. Like, I have a friend doing this. Michael and I have played some things together that are not like necessarily the most musically satisfying. Yeah. But we decided, hey, we're going to have fun. We just have a good time.
We're going to make the most of where we are right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Like right in that moment, you can't be anywhere else. So it's like you might as well, I don't know. And it sounds sort of cliche, like, well, the attitude is the only thing that you can control. But it's like, it's kind of what it is. It's like you can't, you already decided you're gonna stick it out for the rest of the concert. Actually, I just heard a story of a cellist who walked out in the dress rehearsal and was like, I hate this orchestra, I hate this conductor, I hate my stand partner, and just like left. And it was like, why would you make it all the way to the dress rehearsal and then decide that? It's like you're missing out on, you at least wouldn't get the paycheck. Like you could at least stick it out for another 3 hours and get the paycheck and then never come back. But whatever.
I do have to say there is this really beautiful moment. I don't know if you guys have experienced it before, where you're sitting in a gig and you know how much you're making and you suddenly realize it's not worth it. And you can choose and you're like, you know what? I don't need to take it again.
Yeah.
Like when this comes up, I now know it's not worth it. And that actually feels, I guess, terrible because you're still sitting in the gig. I'm specifically thinking of like, I don't know if you guys ever have to do, maybe it's more something I have to do as a bassoonist, but commencement is like the vein of my existence. Oh my
Well,
gosh.
it's like how we feel about weddings, I'm going to say.
The bass line. Oh, I just like. Dun, 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 dun. Oh my gosh. I mean, I just can't even because it brings back some really
Traumatic. It's a trigger.
Yeah, it is a trigger for me. That bass line, I can't even sing it. But anyways,
because that's one of the
my
ones
people will
where
know what I'm
if
saying.
you're like playing for a huge school or something, you probably have to like just
Right,
keep
and, like,
looping
literally,
it
guys,
until 5,000
3
people.
hours. It makes you want to die. And so like, anyways, but you all of a sudden you realize like, oh, this isn't worth $5. And you may like, it also can be one of those things where you're like, oh, I actually have an audition coming up that I need to practice for. And so this is not worth my time anymore, actually. And it's wonderful to be at a point where you can say no to the money and you know that you're worth more. Like that is a fantastic feeling. I don't know if you guys have felt that before. And you're like, okay, lesson learned. I can now have the confidence to, because it takes confidence to say no to gigs after you've been crawling up the mountain trying to get money and gigs and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. It feels good to be able to say no. I don't mean that in a negative sense.
No, absolutely.
No, it does feel good.
And I feel like I do want to chime in here and say that one hidden respite along the way that people don't take advantage of is sometimes if the gig, if you know maybe the booking manager or you're just, if the gig is maybe not too serious, you can say, you know, I can't make it to these 2 rehearsals. Can I still? No, really? Yeah, you say like, but can I play anyway? Or like you kind of pick and choose what you can do. And sometimes they will still say yes. And it saves you. I mean, it's surprising how just 2 rehearsals fewer in a project
saves your soul.
Yeah, can save your soul. And then you realize, okay, it's not so bad. Maybe, okay, I made, you know, $200 less or $100 less, whatever, than I would if I played everything. But I am sane and I don't want to kill myself or anyone around me. And it's okay. And this is something I'm actually going to be doing in 2 weeks. It's my wife's birthday, her birthday weekend. And I was like, you know what? Okay, I'm just not going to play the gig. And then I told them I wouldn't play. And they're like, but if you just don't play the concerto, then you don't have rehearsal Saturday night or Sunday morning. And I'm like, ka-ching. Done. Awesome.
Ka-ching.
Okay, will do. Literally.
I love when that works out.
Yeah. And so, but that's the thing, you know, say rather, okay, I don't have to say no to the whole gig. I just, you know, to half of it, and I still will feel sane.
Can I ask you guys real quick about sort of the elephant then in the room is taking the free gig, or like, is it ever okay to play for free? Have you guys done it? Did it? Like
Sarah's pointing
what are
at
sort
me.
of the guidelines of if you take the free gig?
I can speak to that because for 2 years I played for, sometimes I would get $150 for working the entire week, being the personal manager, the librarian, and the concertmaster.
Do you also do the dance and choreography?
That's $50 per cap.
Yeah. Per hat. Yeah. It's basically the worst fee ever. But some weeks I didn't get that. For an entire year, I didn't get that. So I will say that I learned invaluable lessons because it was a conductorless group, and sometimes it was very much worth it to gain that experience, the leadership experience, because as you all know, if you're in the position to lead an orchestra and you can't cue right, then that's going to make you look stupid. And I think that being able to cue, knowing the score, these are all very valuable things. I learned a lot about personnel and administration. So I have, you know, empathy for those positions in an orchestra because I know they're not easy. And I can't say with 100% confidence that it was the right choice for me. I can be glad for what I gleaned from it, but it was very stressful. And I think in that you have to be extremely selective in what you choose to do for free. Right. However, I can cite a recent victory in which I played a gig that was like 3 days and I only got like $250 or something. And I did it because it was a Baroque gig that was like going to bring me joy. And from that gig, I got a really awesome connection last week and was able to do this amazing gig. So that's, you just kind of have to weigh these things and be like, are there going to be people at this gig potentially that can give me future work? And can I afford this low fee or this no fee for this event to make it worth it? Sometimes it is, and sometimes it turns.
That's sort of what I think is that if there are, it's like if you are going to be a part of a orchestra or like a chamber group or something where there are other influential people there, like it might be worth it to meet those people that, especially if they are contractors for other work in town. Sometimes if it's like if it's just you playing for exposure or something, like a lot of times those don't lead to anything. Like exposure, you can starve playing for exposure, Or I think maybe another situation is if you're getting something in return, like if there's going to be a photographer there that you can get some headshots or some pictures of you playing in action or something like that might be worth it. I'm not sure. Do you have any other sort of guidelines like that?
I think you can take a free gig for networking. For example, a while ago, I played a gig in Vienna for a band who wanted a string quartet or string quintet or something, to kind of accompany him. And it was then broadcast live on the radio. It was at a really interesting venue. And I did that. I mean, it was paid, not too much, but I did it really because I was going to be playing with a well-established artist and the other musicians he was bringing in from other bands, for guitar and drums and stuff. I was like, it's good to be, then a string person that they're going to know, someone that they're going to be like, we might call them in the future. And that's happened before, like during the gig, they ask, do you do sessions or do you ever do any other band work? And it's like, oh yeah, sure. Of course. Like that sort of thing. Like if you realize for networking, it might bring you something, I think it's okay to risk it. Or something totally unrelated is then to also, organize gigs yourself that don't play. Sometimes it is fun, to organize a good chamber group, or if there's going to be an interesting art gallery or an exhibition, to offer playing some duos or something there. That is some type of exposure that does help, because if it gets received well, then you can propose to the the art gallery, the museum, monthly chamber music concerts or a lecture recital on the artist and his work or something. There are ways to, I think, get your feet in the door, with a free gig of sorts.
I mean, this is not a gig per se. It is an issue of taking something for free. I would say maybe doing something for free. As you guys know, I have a lot of experience doing outreach stuff with kids. I'm actually a teaching artist in the state of Pennsylvania. And so that has been a journey to get there. And I started this whole part of my professional life back in Cincinnati. So that was 2011 and built a program there. So for the first, how many years did I do it without getting paid? And that was building. So we were an outreach program connected to the Conservatory of Cincinnati, and we went out into schools and did after school programs. And so I directed that and I taught that. I think 2 years I didn't get paid for that. And I would make sure my teachers got paid, but we had no money, obviously. And then eventually was able to write grants and able to get paid for that. And that honestly was invaluable experience, right? That was experience that I was able to gain not only in building a program. What does it mean to run a nonprofit? What does it mean to create a budget and a project plan and do grant writing? I was able to do that in a pretty amazing setting at CCM. They have it's an MBA, MA, I think is what it is, or MFA. I forget the letters that go with that. Yeah. Lots of letters.
Masters of something.
Of arts administration. It's a fantastic program. And so I was able to work side by side with people to help me do that. And I learned so much. And I mean, what a unique experience and great skills I learned. And then when I came to Erie, after having built that program, passing it off, was able to sort of have programs like that again. I remember talking to my husband and just saying like, I mean, I never made any money doing it. At the end, I made like a little bit of money and I was doing a huge amount of work and I built basically an entire department at the university. And so I remember having a conversation with my husband where I was like, that was such a great experience and it was worth it. I will never do that again. Because honestly, and I was like, there becomes a point where you say, what I'm doing is good. And I don't mean that in a way like, oh my gosh, I'm the most awesome, because guess what? I'm not. But in saying that what I'm doing is actually great, and an orchestra or whatever entity it is that is paying me should pay me. It's worth the money. And it's worth the money for them to have that program.
Do you mean like it was rewarding in ways like other than monetarily? Is that kind of what?
Well, not only did I gain all of that job experience, I mean, now, for example, I have a list of recommendations that's like pages long of like fantastic people in the city of Cincinnati that I had to work with because of what I was doing. And that, I mean, and that I did for free, but I have that in response. And I also gained the experience and the confidence to build a program on my own.
Yeah. Because I mean, did anybody call you up and say like, we need somebody to start a start a after school program? Was this like, this was your initiative to do, right?
So they actually weren't doing it, and I approached them with the idea, and they didn't. They just like didn't have the means to do it, and they were going through like a dean change and all this kind of stuff. So I didn't want to take no for an answer, and so I just started on my own.
Awesome.
Right. And so I was like, this is, I mean, a different conversation, but about how tough the public schools are in Cincinnati and how sad the level of poverty there is. And I was like, we just have to do something. Are you kidding me? And music is such a great way to do that. And so like just saying like, no, we're just going to start it. And then they hopped on board after a year. And it was a great opportunity for so many things. But I remember saying, you know, I obviously am older too, and the maturity to say like, I actually won't do it for free again. And I remember also having a conversation. I don't know if this is along the same lines or something a little bit different. I was actually just listening to, oh no, can I say that?
Yeah.
I was actually just listening to a podcast yesterday after I listened to the Fantastic Per Service podcast.
Shameless plug for ourselves.
Why not? Take it, guys. It's a great podcast, so you should take it.
But the other one you were listening to.
It was Press Play with Madeline Brand, which is a political podcast. I am shamelessly into political podcasts. There was a recent study that came out about equal pay for women, blah, blah, all that kind of stuff. The gist of it basically was, what people pay you is what they place your worth as. And if we can go to church for a second, that's even in the Bible, right? Like where your money is, there your heart is, right?
So good.
And when I looked at education, I was like, these kids are worth it. Music is worth it.
Hallelujah!
These kids are worth it. Music is worth it.
Hallelujah!
Take it to church.
You can look at it in terms of a gig. My playing is worth it. And what people pay you is the value they put on it, right? So you can look at a society and say, I can see where the society's priorities are based on their budget, based on where they put their money. I can see where this person or this family's priorities are based on where they spend.
Taking it to church.
Yeah, no, this is so good, because I mean this is, you know, when we were talking about what do you prioritize for spending, is like just look at your bank account or your credit card statement. Like what you spend your money on is what you value. And obviously when I did that for us, I was like, oh, we eat out a lot. I guess we really like eating out. But that's so also true, is that if you take too many of the free gigs, or you play so much for exposure, whatever, is like people are going to start pegging you as the guy who will play for free. And it's like, that's not good also to start getting that reputation as the person who will play for free.
And you should turn that around. And it's like, well, where everyone else is placing their priority is. So when I was looking at the education stuff, I just had this moment of realization where I was like, if I provide this service for free for the orchestra, for the community, for the families, there is no value placed on it. Even though obviously I'm looking at it and I'm like, these kids have nothing. They live in poverty. They're homeless. My gosh, they need exposure to music. Like there's so many benefits that come through that with literacy, et cetera. But it's important to do the program and make sure the community is putting money into it, because the community needs to know that it's important. Right. And that's true of your playing. Yeah. If you give it away for free too much, you know, and I know, right? But
So
That's what we use for curse words.
Did I say a bad word?
No.
Oh.
If you give it away for free or inappropriate stuff. Those are
sorry, I couldn't help
inappropriate.
Jess's faces.
Sorry, I was being bad.
Finish your thought so that we can.
That
segue.
was the thought. It was just interesting. In that podcast, the reason I even thought of that podcast was they had said women don't obviously even ask for more money. That is one of the biggest issues, or it is an issue of not having equal pay between men and women in the States, is that women don't ask. And it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, so you actually are worth that. So you should ask.
Yeah,
right?
Great.
I actually have the interesting experience with that, Sarah, where I did this wedding and I said I would do the ceremony and they were like, well, we really want a rehearsal. And I was like, no, I don't do that. Like, and they were like, well, we really, it was something like where the father of the bride was a musician. So like he wanted to have a rehearsal with the musicians. And I was like, no, but if you insist, that's going to be an extra fee. And like, I charged what I thought was enough money that they would be like, oh, forget it. Like, we'll just have you show up to the wedding. And then they were like, no, that's fine. And so I was like, I was actually a little surprised because most of the time that would have priced, I would have felt like they would have been like, because I do feel like music is usually on the low end of people's budget or people, you know what I'm saying? Like that's not where they're willing to put their money, whether it be for the
especially for weddings. It's
even as a community, like where they're going to put their donations or whatever. And so, yeah, I asked and I received, and
You should have asked for $1 million.
I should have, but it was kind of cool because it's like, oh, they actually kind of care about it. Now we did have to play a piece from Twilight for this wedding, so I was kind of like, this is how we have a rehearsal.
One step closer.
Yes,
Exactly, Michael.
it was that song.
It's everywhere. Sorry.
It is everywhere.
I
It is
played
in a lot of
weddings.
weddings, but it just
Christian is not having it.
Christian's not interested, but sitting back in his chair, so I'll just keep talking.
We'll just keep talking until he segues us into our next topic.
I think Jess's story is our segue.
So
actually.
anyway, I think that's a good. We can't always ask for things. Like there are a lot of gigs that you're just told this is what it's going to be, and so you have to decide if it's worth your time and effort. But then there are certain things like if you're contracting or whatever, you can ask, and then you might get priced out, or you might be told we can't do that, and then you again have the opportunity to decide if that's what you want to do.
And there is room for negotiating. Sorry, sometimes if you start higher what you're worth, like, and then maybe they say, hey, we can't quite do that, but we can do closer to that. Like maybe it's still worth doing, but it's like you have to start. You start at what you're worth if you're setting your price. Sorry, Sarah, you had something.
I was going to ask you guys. So then, how do you actually know what you're worth? Are you worth $5, or are you worth $1 million, or maybe somewhere in between, or maybe just $1 million?
Well, I think you have to know your audience, know your employer, because if you have like let's say you have a master's degree and you're able to set your pricing for teaching, then you ask other people that have master's degrees in your area, and you maybe just like take a poll of people. That I feel like teaching is an easy one to know how to price yourself. But I've learned here in New York that if you have there have been several times when we've been asked to perform a movement from a string quartet for like a house concert, and that they're bougie people, then you are able to charge them $1,000 for an hour of work for 4 people, because
they can afford it.
You just have to read your audience, your employer, and know exactly where they're coming from, what resources they may have, and what it's worth to them, so that you can price yourself accurately.
Yeah, I think you definitely have to ask a couple people, because also some people might not really tell you exactly. I wouldn't say that they lie, that they're going to lie to you, but sometimes they will say like, oh, well, this is what I normally charge, but maybe they don't actually charge that to certain students. Like maybe they have a sliding fee scale. There are lots of, professionals, like there are lots of therapists, there were doctors that have sliding fee scales. So it's not like music teachers are also like, oh, I always charge my top rate. Like sometimes they might not tell you that they don't charge their full rate, even though they say, oh yeah, I definitely charge $50 an hour. But maybe that's not always true.
So for my freelancing, apart from music, so when I edit texts or write things for people or teach English privately, I always charge now. Like I tell them, like my current rate is $50 an hour. And usually, I mean, rarely does a private person say, okay, that's fine. Usually they say, oh, that's a bit pricey. And then I often say, well, I can send you to someone else. I do have a colleague who charges less. And then I say, but honestly, this person is not as good. They don't have the experience that I have. No, really, I say that. Like, they don't have the training I have. They don't teach at a university. They don't do this or that. And I said, they're fine and they'll get the job done if you just want this and that. And I said, but if you're really looking to change these things or see how it's done, I really explained the service that I provide. They don't think, oh, for what I want or expect, that's too much. Then they have to really understand what you're offering and what you're worth. And then it makes sense to them. Because if they think it's someone who's just editing my text, 50 is too much. But if I say, I'm going to correct all of your grammar mistakes, I'll point them out to you so you don't have to make them again in the future. You know, this sort of thing. Like if they feel like they're learning from it or...
That's fantastic, Christian.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I even say, and if they're looking for multiple lessons, say, if you buy 10 at one time, you know, I'll charge you 45 an hour instead of 50. I'll give you some sort of discount.
Offer incentive. Yeah.
Exactly. I think there are ways to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I think.
I think you can take that and use that too with your teaching, you know, whether it's music or English, like Christian's just saying, you know, explain exactly what you're teaching and why you deserve that price because of your background or your teaching experience. You know, all of that stuff adds up. You have to look at it like a client.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're your students, but they're actually your clients. And you have to look at it more like a business. And they need to know exactly what the service they're going to be receiving.
Yeah. And like, don't be afraid to like name drop, because it's inappropriate to name drop in a circle of colleagues, right? Everyone gets so annoyed with people. But when you're offering a service, performing or teaching, then you need to name your accomplishments and not be afraid to talk yourself up, because that's exactly what's going to provide that incentive for the buyer to be like, I play with this orchestra, I play with this group, I sub in this, like I play in this pit. And then they're suddenly like, oh, you're so amazing and you're worth it. Now I know that you're worth it.
Right.
Something for me learning about like selling and pricing and stuff is that people will often criticize the price, or they'll say like, oh, that's just too much money. But really, people don't necessarily buy things just because of the price. And a lot of times they buy things because of their emotions. They buy things because of this picture in their mind of what their wedding or what their, you know, beginning lessons is going to how it's going to change their life. And so I think that was a great example, Christian, of what like painting this picture of what your services are going to provide and how you're different. Because if it's just a numbers game, that's a quick way to this like race to the bottom of just like, oh, well, the other string quartets charges 100. Well, maybe we should only charge 75 so that, you know, then they're going to change their prices to 50. It's this sort of like, we're all going to lower our prices if that's the only thing that you really think matters, because it's not, because there's so much more.
Yeah. And it's so crazy, like having someone else to recommend them to. I think that's something that we don't ever see in other areas of life. Like if you're going to buy a car, rarely will one car lot say, actually just go next door, like it's cheaper or whatever. Like that's not going to happen. And there's some sort of psychological effect that like happens when they realize like, oh, they're willing to recommend someone else. They must really be good or really be confident that they don't need to like sell themselves short. And I think that's true. Like if you say, this is what I offer, this is my standard, I'm not going to go below that. If you want to go below that, that's fine. Go to my colleague. Here you go.
But I also think that when we lower our prices, or maybe we'll say, okay, we'll do this for $125, but you're really like Anna, she's doing 3 jobs for the price of not even one. You know, there's a time and place for that. But you actually also, it's not just showing that maybe you don't value yourself enough, but you're actually doing a huge disservice to your colleagues, because I don't know, it's the opposite of price gouging in some ways. Like if you are willing to do so many things for like not enough money, you really do a disservice to your fellow colleagues, and you put yourself in a hole then where, I mean, I've had it where I'm like, I don't want to play for this contractor because they make too many promises for me about what I am willing to do for a certain amount of money. if that makes.
I was just going to say there's a time and a place for knowing when it's acceptable and knowing when it's not, like to a certain degree. And a lot of times, as Sarah can vouch for, it's when you're starting a nonprofit that's absolutely necessary for maybe a year or two to not take money. But that is, I feel like that's the exception to the rule. Otherwise, doing work for free should not ever be the norm because, like you said, it is doing a disservice to everyone around you and your profession.
Right. Well, and I've had people, recommend me for things, but they said, oh, she'll do this, this, and this for X amount of money. And then I've gotten the emails and I'm like, no, I won't.
No,
I won't do that because you're asking me to do so many things for not, you know what I'm saying? So I'm just saying those are people that I will not play for anymore because I don't appreciate my time being sold at a price that I would not sell my time for.
Yeah, I think this is something where this really is specifically comes up is if you're contracting a wedding, that if you're going to be doing all the communicating with the bride, all the contracting of other musicians, and getting all the music in order and stuff, like all those are all tasks that you need to charge a contracting fee for. And a lot of people don't think, I can't charge this extra. It's not right for me to make more money. But then when I call Jess and Anna to only pay them less, no, you need to do that.
And we all understand it. And Greg and I learned that in Austin. We were doing 3 weddings a weekend. We started having contracts and putting in a contractor's fee, and it made the process way more bearable.
I'm gonna switch it over to Sarah here because this is what I was trying to do.
But you overlooked the fact that I have played a wedding before.
I'm sorry.
Whose wedding was it? Can we remember? Who asked to have a bassoon and oboe duet at their wedding? Do you guys remember who that was?
I think was it Michael?
His name rhymed with Schmeichel.
I don't know.
Schmo Giblin.
Yeah, I'm probably one of the few people that asked for the Poulenc trio.
I was going to say, fun fact for all my double rate friends, we played the Poulenc trio, the second movement, and we Picardy-thirded the end. It was fantastic because it's actually depressing. I'm pretty sure he Poulenc rolled over in his grave.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It was a disservice, but also it was very sweet. And we love you both.
He knew that it was for a good cause. For Mike.
We also had to tune the piano, and the man that tuned it had to come in with an oxygen tank on wheels. The wheels, the pedals were so squeaky, we had to take Vaseline out of my purse and put them on the pedals. But anyways, it was a fantastic
If you
wedding.
ever want proof that on weddings, something always goes wrong. Point in case in my own wedding.
I was going to say,
this was just
also at my wedding, it rained on all 3 of you. So love you guys. Love you guys. So it's interesting because we can talk about how do you even figure out the price that you're supposed to have? Because, obviously you're not going to be walking up to the concert master of the orchestra and saying hey, how much do you charge for lessons? I mean, maybe you can if you have a good relationship with them, but you can't just walk into an orchestra, never have met the person and do that. So for me, it was an issue of this is a whole new world for me. How do I even know what to charge? Do I charge $5 or do I charge $1 million? No point of reference. Where do I even start that journey? And honestly, I think it takes a lot of confidence. I mean, you have to be careful. In the business world, there are often legal reasons you can't discuss salaries. But in our world, it's not like that. So finding people that can be mentors, I think, is so critical. And maybe a mentor in your field that is older or more experienced and in the area longer, that you can have, I don't want to call it an intimate conversation, but a trusted conversation might be a better way to say that. A trusted conversation about pricing and scaling and all that kind of stuff. That's one thing I would absolutely suggest doing, especially if it's a new area you're moving to, when you move to Indianapolis, Jess. When I moved to Erie, I can't charge what Anna would charge in New York in Erie. Well, I could, but there are no bassoons anyway, so whatever. It's important to do that. But also, if it's a new profession for you, is important to have good advice on that. The other thing I would suggest doing, and this is something I do now because it can be hard, we can be somewhat self-effacing, and we've talked about the inner critic and all the things that come with that. To be confident in self-worth, I will sometimes think of, if I knew me, this is going to be kind of funny to think about, but if I knew me as a different person, what would that person be worth for this job? How much should that person make for, I just finished a 60-day residency. It was over 20 weeks and wrote the curriculum myself for 3 units. So like, what should that person be paid for all of the time, including curriculum, meetings, grant writing, like all those things combined? How much does that person actually deserve with all that time? Oh, it's actually, I would do this much. And then it's like, okay, then that is how much I should ask for. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. I think like separating yourself from yourself is helpful because we have all these self-doubts about like, but I can't charge that. I'm not worth that.
Well, and then you have to follow through. So like, okay, now I'm charging this amount of money and I'm going to do a good job. Be that coming prepared to a gig, be that having the lesson plans and materials ready, etc. That's an important thing.
Okay, so if someone books you for an hour, yes, you're using your expertise for that hour, but that doesn't mean your expertise doesn't exist all the hours leading up to the gig and afterwards, right? They're paying also, in theory, for your education, for your practicing, for your artistry, for your organizational skills, right? It's everything that they're paying for, the quality of your service. And I think that's something really worth remembering. And I like how you said, Michael, separating yourself from it. If you realize, how much would I be willing to pay for the exact same service from someone of great caliber? And then you say, oh, actually it is 60 an hour. Then, okay, I feel that it's amazing how empowering that feels when you realize, oh, I can charge that much for myself and feel okay about it. Not only feel okay about it, feel good about it, feel confident. And I think customers pick up on that. They pick up on someone who's confident when they're honest about it, rather than someone who's just trying to make a quick buck.
I know, they can smell the desperation of like,
yeah, or they can smell someone who's maybe lying or kind of sleazy about it, like, oh, I charge 100, and it's like, well, actually, why? Like, you're not exuding confidence and artistry. You're exuding someone who's just trying to weasel money out of me.
Well, and there's that entire marketing strategy in terms of price point where you can put the same object in front of people and charge different amounts, and people often want to pay more because they think it's worth more if it's a higher cost. I'm sure I am not in business at all, obviously, from my very terrible description of that. But you understand what I'm saying, where people put higher value, again, looping back to what we said before. And when you charge more, they often think they're getting a better service. Not that you want to, I'm not saying we should try and like gimmick them out of money, but when you charge less, it's, it's valued less.
Right.
And so,
absolutely.
and people are like, oh, this is the lesson with this, and you're like, well, actually it is worth that much. So there is a fantastic book. So part of my artist diploma, we had to take a couple classes that were about what it means to build a musical career in today's world, which was fantastic. And honestly, which should probably be a part of every music degree in the world now. And maybe it is, because also I've been out of school for a while. All percent alert. But anyways, this is, it's one of the books that I loved. It's called Beyond Talent.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure you can do your fancy linking to the notes, etc., Michael. Yeah. Beyond Talent, Creating a Successful Career in Music by Angela Beeching. And maybe you guys have heard of it before.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's so important. I mean, obviously there's a whole lot that goes into the book beyond just like pricing. And I know you've talked about this on shows before, but in today's world as a musician, we're not just doing that traditional path. And so all of a sudden are required to have skills as entrepreneurs or business people that we wouldn't necessarily have had. And part of that is knowing how to price a product if the product is us. And so anyways, this book is super, I would really highly suggest it, especially if you're maybe getting a master's or just leaving college, or actually even in your undergrad. It's a fantastic resource.
Yeah.
And there are other books like it, but that's just the one I know off the top of my head.
It's great. These are all like awesome things to think about.
I mean, just something I really didn't think about as fresh out of college was that if you accept a wedding gig and you're making $100, like you don't get to keep all $100. Like you have to pay taxes. And as a freelancer, as a self-employed, you lose a lot of that money just on taxes alone.
So
many dollars.
Oh my gosh. We just did it. And
I know. That's why I'm having this reaction.
On tax season right now. It's in 3 days, you guys. 3 days.
That's why I'm having this reaction, because I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh. And I just got a letter from the IRS and they're like, you actually owe a couple $100 more. And I was like, are you kidding me?
I know.
They were like, Anna Luce, that one that lives in that building, you. We want more money for
We
that.
want more money.
But even the places where they take out the taxes, and I was like, oh, freaking FICA.
Right?
Or is it FICO? I don't know. Either one.
FICO, like your card.
That's my credit report.
Credit score, I mean.
That's my credit score. So FICA is the one that's taking out my money.
Yeah.
And Social Security, which I won't even get. But that's a whole different story.
That's a whole
Conversation.
nother
We need
topic.
another podcast.
Hey,
for
but
that.
guys,
Yeah.
shout out to the union because I have dental insurance and got to have a root canal this week because I finally got enough union work.
Got to?
Yay,
Obviously the
me.
word got to.
Yeah, I
Got
got
to
to
have a
get
union.
Should I get insurance through the union? Okay, different topic.
Separate topic. This
Sorry,
is
I just found out I'm going to lose my insurance because I now make too much money and they think I don't qualify,
Oh,
even though I make
man.
$4.
well, we will do a separate episode on insurance, but this
Yeah,
has been great, you guys. Any final thoughts?
You know, I really like what Sarah said and then Michael said about like, you know, how if you were going to give your friend a job doing the same thing you're doing, how much would you want them to be paid for that job?
So that's a great point.
And then
It is helpful to find a mentor, especially if you're doing something like podcasting and you've never done it before, or educational outreach or teaching lessons and finding, you know, and it's great to have connections and networking in general.
right.
I think, people want to help. They want to answer your questions if you ask them. Like nobody's like, I'm not gonna. I don't think if you ask somebody, they would ever say, I'm not gonna tell you. Like people want to be helpful.
Yeah, actually, my professor for my undergrad, my teacher for my undergrad had a master's student who was interested in outreach and forwarded her information to me. And I was like, so excited to get to talk to her about it.
Yeah.
Ask and you shall receive is maybe the one of
Going
the.
back to church?
Yeah, we're going back to church.
What?
You'll see because he's going to put it in the
I
episode.
was thinking, what was that rock song?
Is that Hosier?
Take
Hosier
me
or
to
something?
church. Da-da-da,
Hosier, I can't-
ba-da-da, ba-da-da. I don't know really how it goes.
Another old person alert.
Hosier. Yeah.
Oh, and you dirty.
Hosier? Who are these whippersnapper
Old person
kids?
Hoosier?
Who's your mama? Okay.
All right, Sarah. It's
I am just so thankful to have gotten to do this. This was a
No,
blast.
thank you so much for joining us.
Basina's the best. And also, oh, whoops. Oh, gosh.
It's okay,
Did I say that
Michael
out
can
loud?
cut
It's
that.
okay. It's okay. It's okay.
all right, guys. I'm Michael O'Giblin.
I'm Anna Luce.
I'm Jessica Wiersma. Sorry, I totally forgot.
You go last. You go last.
I totally forgot what was happening.
All right, guys. I'm Michael O'Giblin.
I'm Anna Luce.
I'm Jessica Wiersma.
I'm Christian Marshall.
And I'm Sarah Lee.
I wish I could have done a bassoon trumpet.
That would have been cool. Also, I seriously forgot what was happening for a second. I'm sorry.
Well, that is our show, folks. Thanks again so much to Sarah Lee for joining us today. Man, there's so many great things to think about. Are there some self-limiting thoughts that you're believing? Try writing them down and telling them to your friend. Chances are you won't do that because it'd be too insulting. So stop saying those same things to yourself then. Also, do you have a mentor or some colleagues who can help you figure out how much you can charge? And lastly, can you think of someone else with your same experience and credentials and ask, what should they be paid? Once you have that figured out, the last step is to have the confidence to actually charge it. Well, if that was enjoyable for you, would you help us out and leave us a rating or a review in iTunes? People love reviews, and the more we get, the more people will find our show. And the more people who find our show, well, it gets kind of complicated after that. You can follow along with us during the week on Instagram. We are at Per Service Podcast, and we greatly appreciate the support from Siri Bloom, Kathleen Lovengood, Sarah Lee, and Ann Bergman for supporting our show on Patreon. Today, you are you, and that is truer than true. There is no one else alive who is youer than you. And if you, dear listener, would like to join the community of supporters, head over to perservice.co/patron or just search for our show on patreon.com. With your financial support, we can continue to make this show better and reach more people and also make it more often. Wouldn't that be nice? I think it'd be nice. Well, again, you can find everything about this episode and more on our show notes page, which is perservice.co/26. And I leave you now with these words of wisdom from Winnie the Pooh. Always remember, you are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. We'll see you again in 2 weeks. Until then, be well and practice well.